The emergency session had been going on for 6 hours now, and tempers were running hot in the council chamber. 47 different species sat in their designated seats, each one arguing over the same problem they had discussed for the past 5 decades. The humans had not responded. Not once. Not ever. Ambassador Rulin slammed his four-fingered hand against the podium, his green skin darkening with frustration. He was a Taurian, one of the oldest species in the council, and his patience had run out years ago. His voice echoed through the vast chamber as translators worked overtime to convert his words into dozens of languages. 50 years. We have sent 512 official invitations to the planet they call Earth. We have offered them trade agreements, technology exchanges, and a seat at this very table. They ignore us as if we are beneath their notice. High Chancellor Drova sat in her elevated chair at the center of the chamber. She was a Mothran, her species known for their diplomatic skills and their ability to see multiple perspectives. Her silver eyes scanned the room as other ambassadors began shouting their agreements with Rulin. "Perhaps they fear us," suggested Ambassador Nira, a small creature whose people had joined the council only 30 years ago. "When my world received first contact, we too were hesitant. The universe is large and frightening to those who have just discovered it." "Fear," Rulin scoffed. "We detected their first faster-than-light ship half a century ago. Since then their vessels have been spotted in 17 different systems. They explore, they survey, they establish colonies, but they do not talk to us. That is not fear, that is arrogance." Drova raised her hand, and the chamber fell silent. It was one of the few powers her position still held in this increasingly divided council. She spoke carefully, weighing each word. "We will send one final invitation. If they refuse to respond within 30 days, we will impose sanctions, travel restrictions to human space, trade embargoes. They will learn that the galaxy operates on cooperation, not isolation." The vote passed easily. Most council members were tired of being ignored by these newcomers who thought they were special. Within hours, the message was transmitted across the void to Earth, marked with the highest priority codes. The deadline came and went. Earth sent nothing back. What the council did not know was that 3 of their member states had been holding secret meetings for months. The Hakran Dominion, the Cortesh Empire, and the Bavril Confederacy had watched humanity's expansion with growing hunger. They saw worlds that could be taken, resources that could be claimed, and a species that apparently had no allies to defend them. General Cross of the Hakran military reviewed the intelligence reports with satisfaction. According to their scouts, Earth maintained a defensive fleet of perhaps 60 ships, respectable for a young civilization, but nothing compared to what he was assembling. The 3 allied powers had brought together 400 warships, the largest combined fleet seen in decades. "They hide behind their silence," Cross told his fellow commanders during their final planning session. "They think if they ignore the galaxy will ignore them. We will teach them the cost of such foolishness." The invasion fleet gathered at the edge of human territory, a massive collection of ships representing 3 different military traditions. Hakran vessels were built for overwhelming firepower. Cortesh ships favored speed and precision strikes. Bavril warships were mobile fortresses, slow but nearly indestructible. Together, they believed they were unstoppable. Back at Council Station, Ambassador Nira tried one last time to stop what was coming. She presented evidence to Drova in a private meeting, showing surveillance footage of the 3 allied fleets massing near human space. "They are going to attack," Nira said urgently. "We must intervene, send peacekeepers, issue a council order forbidding military action." Drova looked tired. She had been High Chancellor for 20 years, and she had watched the council slowly become more corrupt with each passing cycle. Member states now voted based on who paid them the most, not what was right. "I have tried, Nira. I called for an emergency vote. The Hakran, Cortesh, and Bavril have enough allied votes to block any intervention. They claim this is a defensive action against a potentially hostile species. Legally, I cannot stop them. Then humanity will be destroyed, because we were too proud to accept their silence. Drova nodded slowly. Perhaps, or perhaps we have misunderstood them entirely. On Earth, in a secure facility buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Hayes studied the same surveillance footage that Neera had shown Drova. Human intelligence networks had been watching the Allied fleet assemble for 3 months. They knew exactly how many ships were coming, what weapons they carried, and which commanders led them. Hayes was a career officer who had spent 40 years in Earth's Defense Force. She had gray hair, sharp eyes, and a reputation for thinking 10 steps ahead of everyone else. She turned to her staff officers, who were waiting for orders. "They think we have 60 ships," she said calmly. "They think we are weak and isolated. They think our silence means we are afraid or primitive." "Should we send a warning, Admiral?" asked her second-in-command. "Let them know they are making a mistake." Hayes shook her head. "Words mean nothing to people who have already decided to attack. We have been preparing for this moment since we received that first council invitation 50 years ago. We studied them. We learned their languages, their politics, their technologies, and their weaknesses. Now they are coming to our home with threats and warships." She pressed a button on her console. Across human space, on 12 different worlds and 43 military stations, red lights began flashing. Crews rushed to their posts. Weapons were armed. Reactors were brought to full power. "Activate Protocol Nightfall," Admiral Hayes ordered. "Show them what humanity has really been doing for the past 50 years." In the darkness between stars, 1,000 human warships began to move. General Cross felt confident as his fleet crossed into human territory. 400 ships moved in formation, their weapons charged and shields raised. His tactical display showed the target system clearly. Earth's outer colony of New Vancouver, lightly defended and perfect for sending a message. "Any response from the humans?" he asked his communications officer. "Nothing, General. Their colony stations have gone silent. No distress calls, no diplomatic channels opened, no military transmissions detected." Cross smiled with his sharp teeth. "They know they cannot fight us. They are hiding like prey animals, hoping we will show mercy." His second officer, a younger Hakran named Voss, looked uncertain. "General, our long-range sensors are detecting unusual gravity signatures. Multiple sources, moving at high velocity toward our position." "Probably their defense fleet scrambling to intercept us," Cross said dismissively. 60 ships against 400. Let them come." Then the sensors went wild. The tactical display lit up with contact markers, so many that they overlapped each other. The computer struggled to count them all. Voss stared at his screen in disbelief, his scales turning pale. "General, I am reading 1,000 contacts. No, wait, 1,043 contacts, all of them warship-class signatures." Cross grabbed the console and looked for himself. It was impossible. No civilization could hide that many ships. No one could build a fleet that size without the entire galaxy knowing about it. But there they were, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, surrounding his entire invasion force. The human ships were different from anything the Council species used. They were sleek and angular, with smooth hulls that seemed to absorb sensor scans rather than reflect them. Their engines left strange energy trails that his computers could not properly analyze, and they moved with a precision that spoke of advanced coordination systems. Admiral Hayes sat in the command center of the flagship Defiance, watching her tactical display with satisfaction. Every ship was exactly where it needed to be. The Allied invasion fleet was completely boxed in, with human vessels above, below, and on all sides. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Let us introduce ourselves properly." Her face appeared on every screen in the Allied fleet. She looked directly at the cameras, her expression calm and professional. "I am Admiral Hayes of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered human territory with military intent. You will power down your weapons, lower your shields, and prepare to be escorted out of our space. You have 3 minutes to comply." General Cross snarled at the screen. "Human, you may have numbers, but we have firepower and experience. We have fought wars for centuries while your species was still primitive. Stand down or we will destroy you." Hayes did not look concerned. "You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Cross cut the channel and turned to his weapons officer. "Target their flagship. Fire everything we have. Show these upstarts what real military power looks like." The Hakron ships opened fire first, followed by the Kortesh and Bavril vessels. Missiles, energy beams, plasma torpedoes, and kinetic rounds all streaked toward the human lines. It was an impressive display of destructive force, enough firepower to level a city or crack open a moon. The human ships did not even move. Their shields lit up with a strange blue-white glow as the weapons struck home. Every single shot was absorbed or deflected. The human vessels took no damage at all. Then they returned fire. Human weapons were precise. Instead of massive energy beams or explosive missiles, they used focused quantum lances that punched through shields like they were not even there. Each shot was calculated to disable, not destroy. Engines were taken offline. Weapon systems were fried. Command centers were hit with electromagnetic pulses that knocked out computers but left crew members alive. In exactly 17 minutes, 80 Allied ships were floating dead in space. Their crews were unharmed but trapped in vessels that no longer functioned. The remaining ships tried to retreat, but human vessels blocked every escape route. General Cross watched in horror as his mighty invasion fleet was methodically taken apart. The humans were not even using their full force. Most of their ships had not fired a single shot. They were just there, watching, waiting, demonstrating that they could have destroyed everyone if they had wanted to. His communications officer spoke in a shaking voice. "General, the Kortesh and Bavril commanders are requesting permission to surrender." Cross felt rage and shame mixing in his chest. He had led 400 ships into what was supposed to be an easy victory. Instead, he had walked into a trap that showed just how outmatched they truly were. Admiral Hayes appeared on his screen again. She had not moved from her position. Her hands were folded calmly in front of her. "General Cross, this is your final warning. Surrender now, or we will disable the rest of your fleet. Your crews will survive, but you will be towed out of our space in ships that no longer function." Cross wanted to refuse. His pride demanded that he fight to the last ship, but he looked at his tactical display and saw the truth. The humans had positioned themselves perfectly. They had weapons his sensors could barely understand. They had waited until his entire fleet was committed before revealing themselves. This was not a battle. This was a lesson. "We surrender," he said quietly. Hayes nodded. "Your vessels will be escorted to neutral space. Your disabled ships will be repaired enough to limp home. Tell your governments what happened here. Tell the council what happened here." She leaned forward slightly, and her expression hardened. "And tell them that if the galaxy wants to meet humanity, we are coming to introduce ourselves properly." Admiral Hayes out. The human fleet began moving as one, herding the Allied vessels like shepherds with sheep. Within hours, every invasion ship was being pushed back toward Council space, escorted by vessels that could have destroyed them at any moment but chose mercy instead. Back on the Defiance, Admiral Hayes gave her next order. "Set course for Council Station. Full fleet formation. We have an appointment to keep." The alert systems at Council Station began screaming 2 hours before the human fleet arrived. Security, Chief Palin had never seen readings like this. 1,000 warships approaching in perfect formation. their energy signatures making it clear they were ready for combat if needed. "Should we raise the defensive grid?" his assistant asked nervously. Palin looked at the numbers. Council Station had defenses designed to repel raiders and small attack groups, not an entire armada. "It would not matter. If they want to attack us, nothing we have will stop them." High Chancellor Drova received the notification in her private chambers. She had been expecting this ever since word arrived about the failed invasion. The three allied powers had tried to keep it quiet, but rumors spread quickly in the council. Somehow, impossibly, humanity had hidden a fleet 10 times larger than anyone had suspected. She walked calmly to the council chamber, where ambassadors were already gathering in a panic. Some were demanding immediate military response. Others were calling for evacuation. A few were proposing surrender before the humans even made contact. Ambassador Rulin was shouting louder than anyone else. "This is an act of war. They are bringing a fleet to our doorstep. We must defend ourselves." "With what?" Drova asked coldly. "The three members who tried to invade human space brought 400 ships. They were defeated in minutes with minimal human casualties. We do not have the power to fight them." The chamber fell silent. It was a truth no one wanted to face. The council had grown comfortable in their assumption that they were the dominant force in the galaxy. Now a species they had dismissed as primitive was parked outside their station with enough firepower to reduce it to atoms. A communication request came through on all channels. Drova accepted it, and Admiral Hayes appeared on the main display screen. She looked exactly as she had in the footage from the battle, calm, professional, and completely in control. "High Chancellor Drova, I am requesting immediate audience with the full Council Assembly. We have matters to discuss that concern every member species." Rulin stepped forward. "You bring a fleet to our home and make demands. This is outrageous." Hayes did not even look at him. She kept her eyes on Drova. "You sent us 512 invitations over 50 years. We are finally accepting. Will you grant us entry to the chamber, or shall we continue to communicate through screens?" Drova made the decision quickly. "You may bring a delegation aboard. Our security forces will escort you to the chamber." "That will not be necessary," Hayes replied. "We know the way." 30 minutes later, Admiral Hayes walked into the council chamber with 12 other humans. They wore formal military uniforms, dark blue with silver insignia. They moved with quiet confidence, taking in everything around them with sharp, observant eyes. Drova gestured to a previously empty section of seating. "Please, take your places." Hayes and her delegation sat down. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with various ambassadors. Some looked angry, some looked afraid, a few looked curious. Hayes began speaking without preamble. 50 years ago, we received our first invitation to join this council. We chose not to respond. Many of you have interpreted this as fear, arrogance, or primitive isolation. You were wrong on all counts." She pulled out a small device and activated it. Holographic displays appeared in the air, showing data that made several ambassadors lean forward in shock. "For 50 years, we listened. Every transmission you sent to us was recorded and analyzed. Every public council session was monitored. Every piece of galactic news was studied. We learned your languages, your customs, your technologies, and your political structures." The displays began showing specific information. Trade agreements that heavily favored certain council members. Sanctions imposed on developing civilizations to keep them dependent. Military contracts awarded based on bribes rather than merit. "We also learned about your corruption," Hayes continued. "Ambassador Rulin, you have accepted payments from 17 different weapons manufacturers in exchange for voting to approve military actions that enriched them. Chancellor Drova, you are one of only 8 members in this entire council who has not accepted such payments." The chamber erupted in shouts and denials. Hayes waited patiently for the noise to die down. "We did not respond to your invitations because we needed to understand what we would be joining. What we found was a system that claims to value cooperation and peace, but actually maintains power through economic manipulation and selective enforcement of rules." Ambassador Nira, the small representative who had tried to warn about the invasion, spoke up. "What do you want from us?" Hayes stood up and her delegation stood with her. "We want nothing from you. We are here to make our position clear. Earth will not be joining your council. We will not submit to your regulations or your authority. We will engage with individual civilizations on our own terms, through bilateral agreements based on mutual respect and fair trade." Rulin jumped to his feet. "You cannot simply reject the council. We govern this sector of space. You will follow our laws or face consequences." Hayes turned to look at him directly. "You tried consequences. General Cross and his allies brought 400 ships to threaten us. We sent them home with their crews alive, but their pride shattered. If you truly believe you can enforce your will on humanity, you are welcome to try. We have 1,000 ships currently surrounding this station. We have more in reserve. And unlike your forces, our crews are not divided by politics or bribery. They follow orders and they trust their commanders." She gestured to the holographic displays. "We are releasing all of this evidence to public channels across the galaxy. Every species will see what their representatives have been doing. What happens next is up to you." Drova stood as well. She looked old and tired, but there was something like relief in her eyes. "You have planned this very carefully, Admiral Hayes. You waited until you were strong enough to resist us, wise enough to understand us, and prepared enough to expose us. We learned from history, Chancellor. Earth has had empires that became corrupt. We know what happens when power is concentrated and accountability disappears. We will not enable that system by joining it." Hayes and her delegation turned to leave. As they reached the door, Hayes looked back. "We are not your enemies unless you make us so. Choose wisely." The evidence Admiral Hayes released spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Within 24 hours, every civilian with access to a communication network had seen the corruption data. News organizations broadcast it constantly. Social movements began forming on dozens of worlds, demanding answers from their representatives. Ambassador Nira sat in her small office, reading through messages from her homeworld. Her people were furious. They had trusted the council to guide them as a young civilization, only to discover they had been systematically overcharged for basic necessities and denied fair trade opportunities. A message request came through from an unexpected source, Admiral Hayes. Nira accepted it immediately. "Ambassador Nira, I hope I am not disturbing you," Hayes said from her ship. "I wanted to speak privately with representatives who might share our concerns about the current galactic order." "You want allies," Nira replied bluntly. "You exposed the corruption, but now you need help to create something better." Hayes smiled slightly. "Direct and honest. Yes, that is exactly what we want. Earth cannot fix the galaxy alone, nor should we try. But we believe there are other civilizations who want real cooperation instead of exploitation." Over the next week, similar conversations happened across the galaxy. 12 species approached Earth with interest in forming what they began calling the Free Worlds Coalition. These were civilizations that had suffered under the Council's bias policies. Younger species denied fair representation, resource-rich worlds forced into disadvantageous contracts, peaceful cultures bullied into military alliances they never wanted. The old council members watched this new alliance forming with growing alarm. Ambassador Rulin called emergency sessions almost daily, demanding action against what he called human interference in galactic stability. But every time he spoke, someone would broadcast one of his recorded bribes or corrupt votes. His political power evaporated like water in vacuum. High Chancellor Drova took a different approach. She resigned from her position. Her announcement shocked the galaxy. She had been chancellor for 20 years, one of the longest terms in council history. In her resignation speech, she confirmed everything Hayes had revealed and added her own testimony about the corruption she had witnessed but felt powerless to stop. "I have spent 2 decades watching this council drift further from its founding principles," she said to a packed chamber. "I convinced myself that slow reform was better than chaos. I was wrong. Sometimes systems become so broken that they cannot be repaired. They must be replaced." The next day, Drova requested a meeting with Admiral Hayes on Earth itself. Hayes met her at a small conference facility in Geneva, far from the massive military bases where the human fleet was maintained. It was a gesture of respect, meeting the former chancellor on neutral ground without the intimidation of warships. Drova was surprised by Earth. She had expected a fortress world, militarized and cold. Instead, she saw parks and cities, oceans and mountains. Humans went about their daily lives while their military protected them from orbit. It was remarkably ordinary for a species that had just revolutionized galactic politics. "Thank you for meeting with me," Drova said as they sat down with cups of tea. A human custom, Hayes explained, was meant to make conversations more comfortable. "I wanted to understand something. You spent 50 years preparing for this moment. Your fleet, your intelligence networks, your political strategy. Why did you wait so long?" Hayes took a sip of her tea before answering. "Because intervening without understanding causes more harm than good. Earth's history is full of examples. We had empires that conquered others believing they were bringing civilization, only to destroy cultures they did not bother to learn about. We had countries that overthrew governments in the name of freedom, creating power vacuums that led to worse tyranny." She set down her cup and continued. "We needed to learn everything about the galaxy before we acted. Your languages, your histories, your economic systems, your military capabilities. We needed to know who was corrupt and who was honest, who would be an ally and who would be an enemy. And most importantly, we needed to be absolutely certain that our actions would improve the situation, not make it worse." Drova understood now. "You were not hiding from us. You were studying us like scientists study a new discovery." "Exactly. And what we found was a system that had lost its way. The Council was created to foster cooperation between species, but it became a tool for exploitation. We could not join that system. We had to challenge it." "What happens now?" Drova asked. "The Council is fracturing. Some members are joining your Free Worlds coalition. Others are trying to hold onto the old power structure. There is talk of civil war in some sectors." Hayes looked troubled. "That is the risk we took. Breaking a corrupt system creates instability, but we have a plan to minimize the damage." She pulled out a data pad and showed Drova a proposal. It outlined a new structure for galactic governance: transparent voting records, term limits for representatives, fair trade regulations enforced by neutral arbiters, and most importantly, equal representation regardless of a civilization's age or military power. "The Free Worlds Coalition is not meant to replace the Council," Hayes explained. "It is meant to show what cooperation should look like. We hope that seeing a functional alternative will push the Council to reform itself." Drova read through the proposal carefully. It was comprehensive and well thought out. It addressed most of the structural problems that had allowed corruption to flourish. But there was something missing. "This requires trust," she said. "How do you convince civilizations that have been exploiting each other for centuries to suddenly start cooperating fairly?" Hayes smiled. "By showing them it works. The Free Worlds Coalition shares technology freely among members. We help each other without demanding payment or political concessions. We defend each other without trying to control each other. In 6 months, our member civilizations have seen more economic growth and technological advancement than they saw in the previous 10 years under Council rules." "And if the Council refuses to reform?" Drova asked. "Then they will watch their member states leave. one by one, until they are irrelevant. We will not go to war unless forced. We will simply demonstrate that there is a better way." Drova was quiet for a long moment. Then she asked the question she had come here to ask. Would the Free Worlds Coalition accept a former High Chancellor as a member, not representing my government, which is still debating what position to take, but as an individual who wants to help build this new system? Hayes extended her hand, another human gesture. "We would be honored to have you, Drova. Your experience and your honesty are exactly what we need." The former chancellor shook hands with the human admiral, and the galaxy continued to change. 3 months after the Free Worlds Coalition was formed, the Hakran Dominion made another mistake. General Cross had been demoted and reassigned after his humiliating defeat, but his replacement was just as aggressive and far less cautious. General Thorne believed that humanity had won through surprise, not actual superiority. He convinced the Dominion leadership to try again. This time, the Hakran joined forces with the Cortesh Empire and Bavril Confederacy for a different kind of attack. Instead of targeting Earth directly, they launched simultaneous raids on 3 Free Worlds Coalition colonies: New Vancouver, Prosperity Station, and the agricultural world of Green Haven. The raids were meant to be quick strikes: destroy infrastructure, steal resources, and retreat before human forces could respond. It was a calculated gamble. If it worked, it would show the galaxy that humanity could not protect its allies. The Free Worlds Coalition would collapse as member civilizations lost faith in Earth's promises. The attacks began at exactly 400 Standard Galactic Time. Hakran ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel near New Vancouver and immediately opened fire on the orbital platforms. Cortesh vessels hit Prosperity Station with electromagnetic pulses designed to knock out their defensive grid. Bavril warships surrounded Green Haven and began landing ground forces. Admiral Hayes received the alerts 7 minutes after the first shots were fired. She was in a planning meeting with coalition leadership when the tactical displays lit up with red warning markers. She studied the situation for exactly 12 seconds before giving orders. Deploy rapid response groups to all 3 locations. Rules of engagement: disable and capture, but if they fire on civilian targets, you are authorized to destroy. Earth had been preparing for exactly this scenario. When the Free Worlds Coalition was formed, human military advisors had worked with each member species to create integrated defense networks. Human ships were stationed throughout coalition space, not as occupiers but as partners who would respond to threats immediately. The rapid response groups were designed to be small but devastating. Each consisted of 50 human ships equipped with the latest technology and crewed by personnel who had trained for months on quick-strike operations. They could be anywhere in coalition space within 20 minutes. At New Vancouver, the Hakran Raiders were celebrating their initial success. They had destroyed 2 orbital platforms and were moving toward the colony's main shipyard when 50 human vessels appeared around them in a perfect sphere formation. General Thorne opened a channel, ready to threaten and bluff his way out. Admiral Hayes appeared on his screen, and he recognized her immediately. She looked even less impressed than she had during their last encounter. "General Thorne, you have 10 seconds to cease fire and withdraw, or we will disable your fleet." Thorne laughed. "You have 50 ships, I have 80. The mathematics are not in your favor, human." Hayes did not bother responding. She simply nodded to her weapons officer. The human ships fired in perfect synchronization. 80 precisely targeted quantum lances hit 80 Hakran vessels simultaneously. Not a single shot missed. Not a single shot hit the same target twice. Every Hakran ship lost power in the same instant, their engines dead and their weapons offline. The entire battle lasted 4 seconds. At Prosperity Station, the Cortesh forces learned that electromagnetic pulses only work if your target has not already shielded against them. Human engineers had upgraded the station's defensive grid specifically to resist such attacks. When the Kordesh fleet found their favorite weapon useless, they tried to retreat. Human ships were waiting at every exit vector. Within minutes, the entire Kordesh raiding force was captured intact. Green Haven presented a different challenge. The Bavril had landed ground troops, and Admiral Hayes had strict orders from the coalition leadership: avoid civilian casualties at all costs. You could replace destroyed infrastructure, but you could not bring back innocent lives. The response here was more measured. Human ships in orbit used precise targeting to destroy Bavril landing craft, preventing reinforcements from reaching the surface. Meanwhile, human ground forces deployed using rapid insertion pods. They were outnumbered 3-1, but they had better equipment, better training, and complete air superiority. The battle on Green Haven lasted 6 hours. The Bavril troops fought hard, but they were fighting an enemy that knew exactly where they were at all times. Human drones provided constant surveillance. Human soldiers used non-lethal weapons whenever possible, incapacitating rather than killing. When the Bavril finally surrendered, they had lost fewer than 30 soldiers. The human casualties numbered just 4. The response sent a clear message to the galaxy. Attack a Free Worlds Coalition member and you would face immediate, overwhelming, and precisely calibrated retaliation. No warnings, no negotiations, just swift consequences. But Admiral Hayes was not satisfied with just winning the battles. She wanted to prevent future ones. Instead of sending the captured raiders home with warnings, she offered them a choice. You can face trial in your home nations for failed military operations, she told the captured commanders in a recorded message. Or you can provide testimony about who ordered these attacks and why. Give us the names of the politicians and military leaders who sent you on missions designed to fail. Most of them chose testimony. They had been sent to die in poorly planned operations by leaders who were either incompetent or corrupt. General Thorne revealed that Dominion leadership had known the raids would likely fail, but wanted to test human response times and capabilities. The Kordesh commanders admitted their government had been paid by weapons manufacturers to create conflict that would increase arms sales. The Bavril officers confessed they had been following orders from generals who wanted to prove they were still relevant in a changing galaxy. Admiral Hayes released all of this testimony to public channels, just as she had done with the Council corruption data. Within days, governments across the galaxy were dealing with their own internal crises. Citizens demanded to know why their soldiers were being sacrificed for pointless objectives. Military officers questioned orders from leadership they no longer trusted. The Free Worlds Coalition membership requests tripled. 28 civilizations had now joined, with another 15 in serious negotiations. Even some of the old council members were quietly asking about membership requirements. The balance of power in the galaxy had shifted, and everyone knew it would never shift back. 6 months had passed since humanity revealed itself to the galaxy. The changes were profound and irreversible. The old Galactic Council still existed, but it was barely recognizable. Ambassador Rulin and 15 other corrupt representatives had been forced to resign or face criminal prosecution on their homeworlds. New elections were held across the galaxy, with citizens choosing leaders who promised transparency and reform. The Free Worlds Coalition had grown to 28 member civilizations, with Earth remaining as the founding member but not the controlling power. Decisions were made by majority vote, with each species having equal representation regardless of their size or military strength. It was messy and sometimes slow, but it was fair. High Chancellor Drova, now officially retired from politics, had become an advisor to the coalition. Her experience and diplomatic skills were invaluable in navigating the complex negotiations required to integrate so many different cultures and political systems. She spent most of her time on Earth now, which had become the unofficial capital of the new galactic order. On this particular day, she had requested a private meeting with Admiral Hayes. They met in the same Geneva conference room where they had first talked about reforming the galaxy. Tea was served again, and Drova smiled at the familiar ritual. "I have a question that has been bothering me," Drova began. "Your fleet, your technology, your entire strategy. You could have done this 50 years ago when you first achieved faster-than-light travel. You had the capability then. Why did you wait?" Hayes had been asked variations of this question many times over the past months, but never quite so directly. She set down her cup and gave Drova the answer she deserved. Because power without wisdom is dangerous, and wisdom takes time to develop. Yes, we had advanced technology 50 years ago. Our scientists had made breakthroughs that put us ahead of most galactic civilizations. But having better weapons does not make you right. Having more ships does not make you just. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. Earth has a painful history, Drova. We have had empires that conquered others, believing they were bringing progress and civilization. They destroyed cultures, enslaved populations, and justified it all by saying they were helping. We have had nations that overthrew foreign governments, installed friendly leaders, and created chaos that lasted generations. Drova listened carefully, understanding beginning to form in her mind. "When we received that first council invitation," Hayes continued, "we had a choice. We could announce ourselves immediately, flex our military strength and demand respect. Or we could take our time, learn everything we could, and make certain that when we did act, it would actually help rather than harm." "You chose patience over pride," Drova said quietly. "We chose understanding over action. For 50 years, we listened to every transmission, monitored every council session, and studied every species we encountered. We learned your languages by analyzing your broadcasts. We understood your cultures by reading your literature and watching your entertainment. We mapped your economies by tracking your trade routes and financial networks." Hayes returned to her seat. "Most importantly, we learned who was honest and who was corrupt, who genuinely wanted cooperation, and who used the council for personal gain. That knowledge was worth more than any weapon we could have built." "But you did build weapons," Drova pointed out. 1,000 ships, technologies the galaxy had never seen. You were not just observing, you were preparing for war." "We were preparing for peace," Hayes corrected. "We knew that exposing corruption would create resistance. We knew that powerful interests would fight to maintain their advantages. We needed to be strong enough to protect those who wanted reform and to deter those who would use violence to prevent it." She pulled out a data pad and showed Drova something she had not shared publicly. It was Earth's complete military budget for the past 50 years. The numbers were staggering, but what caught Drova's attention was how they were allocated. 60% had gone to defense and deterrence, building ships, developing technology, training personnel. But 40% had gone to understanding the galaxy, cultural studies, language programs, economic analysis, diplomatic preparation. Earth had spent almost as much on learning as on fighting. "This is unprecedented," Drova said, reviewing the data. "Most civilizations spend perhaps 5% of their military budgets on intelligence and cultural understanding. You spent 40%. Because we learned from our mistakes. Earth's greatest military disasters came not from having weak armies, but from fighting wars we did not understand. We invaded countries without knowing their cultures. We supported revolutions without understanding the political factions involved. We made enemies we did not need to make because we were arrogant and impatient." Hayes took back the data pad. "When we came to the galaxy, we were determined not to repeat those errors. We would not intervene until we understood what we were intervening in. We would not make allies until we knew who was trustworthy. We would not expose corruption until we had evidence that would survive scrutiny." "And now," Drova asked, "now that you have changed everything, what does Earth want?" "The same thing we have always wanted. To be part of a galaxy where civilizations cooperate fairly, where young species are mentored instead of exploited, where conflicts are resolved through dialogue before they become wars. We want our children to live in a universe that is better than the one we found. Drova thought about this for a long moment. The galaxy is not used to powerful species who do not seek dominance. There will be those who question your motives, who believe you must have hidden ambitions. Let them question, Hayes said with a slight smile. Questions are healthy. Blind trust is dangerous. We would rather have allies who verify our actions than followers who accept everything we say. That is why all coalition meetings are public, all votes are recorded, all decisions are transparent. We are not asking the galaxy to trust us. We are showing them a system where trust is earned through accountability. A communication alert chimed. Hayes checked it, and her expression became thoughtful. The Council is calling for a joint session with the Free Worlds Coalition. They want to discuss formal integration of our governance models. Will you accept? Drova asked. Of course. That is what this was always about. Not destroying the Council, but helping it become what it should have been from the beginning. As they left the conference room, Drova had one final question. What happens when the next young civilization achieves faster-than-light travel? What will you tell them? Admiral Hayes smiled. We will send them 2 invitations, one from the Council welcoming them to established galactic society, and one from Earth with a different message. Which is, take your time, study us, learn who we are and what we stand for. When you are ready to join the galaxy, you will know which path to choose. We will be here, waiting patiently just as we waited before.